Hello and welcome to the English class. My name is Maggie and I am an English teacher. I know last week I did not go live because I was very sick, but today I feel better. It's just hard because if I'm feeling like really congested and sick, I don't go live because you guys will be hearing like snot and coughing. I also think I don't really think clearly when I'm sick, so when people ask questions, I'm like unable to answer them. What does it mean it wears on me? So if something wears on you, it makes you feel more tired and like you have less energy. Because this word wear, obviously you can wear clothes, but it also has another meaning. For example, a really old pair of shoes that you use and you use and you use, and this old pair of shoes gets holes and starts to fall apart. You can say that my shoes are worn out, or I am wearing out my shoes. They have a lot of wear. It's like to have a lot of exhaustion or be tired. So that's an interesting word, wear, because probably a lot of you know the word wear, like I wear clothes, but it also has this other meaning, which is like to be used and tired and falling apart. Okay, I was thinking today because this week in my group class, we had a topic called unexpected opportunities, and we needed to practice some connectors. So I thought that would be a good topic for all of you because maybe you will be able to practice how to talk about unexpected opportunities in the past, which is useful for conversations, but also for things like job interviews. So this is, the topic that we did in one of my classes this week. The first question that I had was, have you ever had something go wrong that later helped you? Have you ever had something go wrong that later helped you? And an example of a situation like this is, I lost my phone once. It was annoying, but it helped me meet someone. So sometimes I have an image here of a man falling into a pile of gold. So he had maybe some accident or bad situation, but through this bad situation, an unexpected opportunity happened. I'm thinking about in my own life, for example, for a lot of us during the pandemic is a good example. During the pandemic, we kind of needed to stop our lives and pause. For a lot of people, there were really difficult times during the pandemic, but there were also a lot of life changes that made things completely different. In my case, right before the pandemic, my husband and I, we were not married, but we were planning to live together. He was living in Chile and I was living in the United States. And finally, when the pandemic happened, I wasn't able to go to Chile and he wasn't able to go to the United States. And so we both found a program online where we could work on a farm in Mexico. And so we worked on an organic farm in Mexico until we were both able to go to Chile. So for like 5 months or so, we were in Mexico. And at the time, it was very stressful because I just wasn't sure about our ability to have stable jobs. Like we were working on this farm, but that wasn't really allowing us to save money or to have, I don't know, progress in our careers. So it felt very temporary. But I think during that time, I learned a lot about myself. I was able to experience a lot of amazing things, and it was a very meaningful time in my life. I think that maybe I had a lot of very concentrated personal growth in those 5 months during the pandemic. So I'm curious if any of you have ever had an experience like that where maybe something bad happened to you, something went wrong, but actually this resulted in you learning something, experiencing something new, or another positive outcome. We have one example, which is after realizing that my friends didn't have my back, I found new friends. This is a good example because I like this phrase, to have someone's back. To have someone's back, this is like an idiomatic expression in English. It means that you are supporting someone or defending someone. So, for example, if your boss is being really rude to your coworker and you defend your coworker can say, "Oh, thank you for having my back. Thank you for having my back." So if someone didn't have your back, maybe they did not defend you when they needed to, or maybe they did not give you the same level of reliability that you were giving them. So I think that this is a good example for that phrase, and also a very good example for the topic, because maybe this happens a lot with people. When you have a relationship with people that are not really giving you much in return, when you kind of remove them from your life, you're making space for new connections. I'm from Peru. When I traveled to Australia, on the second day I arrived, I broke my left foot. This accident let me know new friends because I met kind people who helped me in this moment. Okay, this is a really good example. So it sounds really horrible that you travel to a different country and when you're there, you break your foot. That's obviously not an ideal situation. No one wants to break their foot, but you're able to meet some new people through the experience. Yeah, I like that example. Hopefully your foot is okay now. um, okay, so I have here, going to the next slide, some different typical, I guess you could say, sayings or mottos related to positivity in life. So I'm going to read through them, and I'm curious if there's any that you guys agree with or if you have a comment related to any of them. So the first one is, when one door closes, another door opens. And this basically means that when one opportunity stops being available to you, a different opportunity maybe will arrive. And so I think about this a lot with jobs. Like if you're applying for a job and they say no to you, then you maybe have the availability to have a new job, which is difficult to think when you're working hard applying to jobs and being told no. It's hard to maybe have this outlook like, oh, one door closed, another door opened. But I think this is an interesting one, kind of related to that. And same thing with maybe with relationships, right? So if you are in a relationship with someone, but that relationship ends, obviously, then you have a new door with a different person. Another phrase that is maybe similar that I like is, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. So basically, when you receive something sour and difficult in life, like lemons, you should turn them into lemonade. something sweet and delicious. So take the bad thing that you get and turn it into a good thing. And we have, when a window is closed, God always has a plan. Yeah, I've even heard different variations of this, like when one door closes, climb out the window, or something like that. This is an interesting phrase because in the class this past week, one of my students said something like, you can say this if you're in a situation where you have a roof over your head and like you have your basic needs met. Because maybe there are some people who don't have those sort of privileges. So obviously it's difficult for those people to just look on the positive side if they don't have like food and a house. And so we kind of came up with a different metaphor, which is like, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade, but you need water and sugar to make lemonade. So you need a couple more things maybe to be able to make this lemonade, like the very basic things. I thought that was a good way of putting it. Unfortunately, it takes a minute to realize it's not the end of the world when things don't go your way. I agree with that. I think when you're seeing the world in a very negative way, it's difficult to get out of that when you are having that mindset or point of view. It's difficult to change the way that you see the world, because if you're seeing things in this very negative way, maybe everything kind of proves your point. Every day we can find something to be like very angry about. So maybe it's hard to get out of that. The third one is kind of similar, to be honest, to the other two. Rejection can be redirection. And the pronunciation here is rejection. Rejection can be redirection. So the T-I-O-N in English is like shun. Rejection can be redirection. This is very similar. It's like someone says no to you. Okay, I'll go find a new door. I'll go make some lemonade. The fourth one is interesting too. I'm curious if any of you agree with this, that we can't always look on the bright side of things. That basically means that it's not always possible to be positive. If you want to tell someone to be positive, the typical phrase is, look on the bright side. But yeah, I have also heard this when talking about positivity. A lot of people bring up, well, we can't always look on the bright side of things. So I'm curious if you guys agree. Do you think it's possible to always look on the bright side? Or do you think it's not always possible to look on the bright side? Do you think it depends on circumstances and like what someone's going through? Or do you think in any situation it's possible to look on the bright side? I can honestly see both sides of the same coin. Okay, we have it's possible. So it's possible to always look on the bright side. Okay, yeah. I think it is really powerful. Our minds are very powerful. Okay, we have it's not always possible. So some differences in opinions. Sometimes you have to face the dark side as well. Yeah, that's a good point. And I don't know if any of you have seen the movie Inside Out. This is an animated movie where there is a character called Joy and another character called Sadness. And Joy wants everything to be a very happy moment and kind of controls the other emotions. They are living inside of a human girl, like a child, and Joy wants her to always be happy. But in the first movie, you learn that sadness is also very important. Like, Joy cannot only ignore sadness, we also need to feel sadness, because sadness also contributes to our lives. At the beginning, sometimes it is not possible to look on the bright side. Yeah. I would say, this is interesting. I would say in the beginning or at first. It's possible and it's useful to see this, to see the life. Okay, but at the end, it's always possible. Yeah, I think that's interesting. So it's something where eventually, maybe some people believe like eventually with time, it's possible to look on the bright side, but you don't always maybe have the tools to do that at first. I'm a bit of a Grinch. I usually expect the worst so I don't get disappointed. Okay, yeah. I'm curious, are you Chilean? I don't remember because I think a lot. I don't mean to generalize, but I've met a lot of people with that outlook. We shouldn't ignore our emotions. Yeah. Sometimes it's good, like, what I've also realized is sometimes instead of just thinking about your emotions, it's better to just feel them in the body because sometimes we cannot think our way out of being emotional. Busted. Yeah, I was like, actually, it's funny. I'm not saying it's everyone, but there is definitely like a culture of pessimism in Chile. So the last phrase here is hindsight is 2020. Hindsight is 2020 is an interesting phrase because it means that it's easier to understand things after they happen. 20 vision is perfect vision. Hindsight, if you know the word behind, like backwards, so behind, and then sight is vision. Hindsight is your ability to look at the past and see retroactively. That is hindsight. So, for example, thinking about the situation where you go to Australia and you break your foot, you could say, in hindsight, it was actually a positive thing because I met more people that way. So it's kind of like looking back on it or in the past. So hindsight, your like backward vision is always very clear and perfect, is the idea here. I don't know if anyone here agrees with this. I personally do. I think that sometimes we judge ourselves in the past based on what we know now. So you might think about yourself when you were only 20 years old and say, oh, why did I make that decision? Why was I so selfish? And you could say, why was I so reckless? And then you realize, okay, well, right now I am older, so I'm wiser and I lived through that. And now I'm judging myself based on the knowledge I have now and not the knowledge that I had at the time. In Persian, we say that once a problem is solved, it becomes easy. Okay. I love Persian expressions. I think there was one class that I had about life mottos that I posted on YouTube and Spotify, and a lot of the ones people were telling me were like, don't look at your neighbor's chicken, or there were like really good Persian expressions. Once a problem is solved, it becomes easy. Yeah, they are kind of like proverbs, but I would say some of them are more modern than others. Like hindsight is 2020 is a more modern feeling proverb, I guess, because our concept of measuring vision and having 2020 vision is a little different. Bring me up means well, it depends. To bring up has two different meanings. One is to mention something. So, for example, like he mentioned me in the meeting. He brought me up in the meeting. Or he mentioned the problem in the meeting. He brought up the problem in the meeting. It's like to mention or to introduce a topic. But you also have to bring up, which means to raise. So like to take care of a child. So if you say, my uncle brought me up, it's like your uncle is the person that took care of you when you were a child. Here are some connectors. So these connectors are going to be really useful when you want to contrast a positive situation to a negative situation. And these are called connectors of concession. Concession means that you say, yes, this is the most important thing, but not this. It's kind of like a type of contrast where you're not saying, contrast is like, this is different from this. Concession is like, this is the big picture, but this part of it is different. So we have although and even though. These are very similar. You can use it before a clause, like a full sentence. Although it rained, we had fun. And we have this example. Even though the price of the trip was pretty dear, I had the blast of a time. The price was pretty dear. I'm curious, maybe that is a phrase? Is that an Australian phrase? Although I woke up so early, I was late. So that's although and even though. We can say although or even though with a full phrase. The other connector of concession that is important is despite. And despite, I think a lot of students understand the word despite, but they don't know how to correctly put it into a sentence. So this is something very important to understand with despite. Despite after has a noun or an ing verb. So despite the rain. You cannot say despite it is raining or despite she went to the party. No, you need to say despite with just a noun or just a thing and not with a full sentence in the way that you use though or although, even though. Although I was tired, I went to the party. Nice, that's a good one. Although I was tired, I did my homework. Here, it's not necessary to use the word but because although is giving you the contrast. So you can say, although I was tired, I did my homework. Or you can say, I was tired, but I did my homework. Despite the bad weather, we went to the beach. Nice. Exactly. So it's not like, despite there was bad weather, we went to the beach. It's despite the bad weather, we went to the beach. Despite the noise, I could hear you. Perfect. Even though the days are sunny, it is cold. Nice. Yeah. And so despite we can use with despite the weather, despite the noise, despite the problem, despite the delay, despite the lack of something. All of these are going to be common words to use after despite. Although is not a verb, so it's not past tense. It's although is always the same. You can say, although I am tired, I am still teaching a class. Or you can say, although I was tired. So although can be used in different tenses, not only in the past tense, because it's not a verb. Despite the fact, yeah. So this is also interesting. If you want to use an entire phrase after despite, you need to say, despite the fact that it was raining. So with despite, you can say, despite the rain, or despite the fact that it was raining. If you want to add more information, you need to say, despite the fact that. You can also use an ing verb. So like, despite waking up early, I was late to school. Or despite my early bedtime. Yeah. So you can also use it with an ing verb because in English, the ing verbs, the gerunds, are verbs acting like nouns. Despite the money I earn, I cannot afford to buy this car. Yes, I would say afford to buy is the most common way to add a verb after afford, would be afford to buy this car. Yeah, okay. Despite feeling disappointed, I believe him. Or despite the feeling of disappointment, I believe him. So you can use ing verb, which is despite feeling disappointed. Or you can say despite the feeling of disappointment. Even though she studied hard, she couldn't pass the exam successfully. Despite the fear of not being understood because of my accent, I still try to speak whenever I get the chance. This is a really good sentence, despite the fear. So remember, fear is a noun. Sometimes people forget that when you have an emotion word, you can have the emotion word as an adjective. I am scared, I am afraid, I am fearful. But you can also have the emotion word as a noun, despite the fear, despite the sadness, despite the happiness, despite the anger. So remember that a lot of words we can change into nouns. Despite how I can use in the office email confirmation. Okay, I think it depends on the situation. Maybe if you're working in an office, it's like, despite the delay, the report will be sent on time. You use despite when you're maybe saying like, this was a problem, but we're still going to be good. So like, despite the confusion, despite the delay, we are going to finish on time. So it wouldn't be used just to confirm something. It would be used specifically to say that there was maybe a problem or a negative side, but you're going to have a positive result. I would use it in that situation. Despite the power outage, the team is finishing on time. I have here, this is going to be a little challenge for everyone. I want you to rephrase the sentence below with the connectors, although, despite, and even though. So I have two parts. She was sick. She went to the meeting. How can I put this in one sentence using despite, although, or even though? So she was sick, but she went to the meeting. How can I use although, despite, or even though in order to put all of this sentence together? A lot of these, we have multiple options. You can change the words so that it fits with the correct connector that you want to use. So we have, even though she was sick, she went to the meeting. Although she was sick, she went to the meeting. Despite being sick, she went to the meeting. Exactly. She was sick, but for this one, if you want to say despite in the second half of the sentence, I would say she was sick, but despite that, she went to the meeting. You could use, if you start the sentence and say the situation, you can say despite that, like despite what I mentioned earlier. She was sick. Despite that, she went to the meeting. That's one way that you can kind of use despite and use that like as a noun when you're using despite. Although she was sick, she went to the meeting. Despite her sickness, exactly. So we could also change the word sick to be a noun, despite her sickness. Even though it was raining heavily, they continued playing football. Yes, so we have, it was raining heavily, they continued playing football. This is interesting. Okay, so this one is a little tricky. What you have here, Mitra, despite raining heavily, they continued playing football. When you say despite raining heavily, it sounds like in the first part of the sentence, you need to use the same subject as the second part of the sentence. So, for example, Despite experiencing the rain, they still played football. Or despite being under the heavy rain, they still played football. So I would say an action that the people that you mention in the second part of the sentence are doing in the first part of the sentence. I think because when I read, despite raining heavily, I expect the second part of the sentence to be more related to the weather instead of the people. Does that make sense to everyone? That maybe in the first part, when we have despite in the ing verb, it should be connected to the subject of the second part of the sentence. So with despite, we cannot say despite the train was full. You can say even though the train was full, if you include the whole phrase, the train was full. But you could say despite the fact that the train was full, we found seats together. Or, like you put here, we found seats together even though the train was full. So with despite, it's a little tricky. We need to change the sentence. Like, despite the lack of seating on the train, or despite how crowded the train was. That could also work. You guys could use a phrase like with how. Despite how crowded the train was. That's like an embedded question. Even though it was raining, they continued playing football. Even though it was raining heavily, they continued playing football. Nice. I would just say for this one, it's not necessary to put a comma after even though. So it's even though, no comma, even though it was raining heavily, comma, they continued playing football. I would put the comma in the middle and not after even though. Despite having an appointment with my doctors, I canceled it. Despite the restaurant having, instead of had, despite the restaurant having terrible reviews, I think I put on a filter by accident. I don't know how to take it. How do I take off Well, you guys are gonna have to just ignore this interesting filter that I have. Despite the restaurant having terrible reviews, we decided to try it. Although the train was full, we found seats together. Nice. Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like the restaurant one is a little tricky because the restaurant had terrible reviews. We decided to try it. When I was in class this week, this was one my students struggled with. So what I told them is, one option is, despite the restaurant's terrible reviews, is one thing we can say. So despite the restaurant's terrible reviews, he forgot his notes. Despite that, comma, the presentation went well. Nice. Exactly. That works. Then we have, she didn't study much. She passed the exam. Hello, Alex. How are you doing today? The project was delayed. The client was still satisfied. Does anyone have one for this? The project was delayed. The client was still satisfied. We decided to try the restaurant despite, I would say that the restaurant here, put it in the possessive. Despite the restaurant's, with the possessive S, despite the restaurant's bad reviews. Or we decided to try the restaurant despite its bad reviews, if you don't want to repeat the word restaurant twice. Even though it is winter now, unfortunately, there is no rain or snow here. Perfect. Yeah, if you guys feel inspired to make another option to write a different one, despite the terrible reviews at that restaurant, I would say, despite the terrible reviews at the restaurant, we just have to try it. We decided to try the restaurant despite... Okay, here I feel like despite having bad reviews sounds like we're talking about ourselves, if that makes sense, because we are like the protagonists of the first part of the sentence. So I would say despite it having bad reviews. Yeah. I'll have to, like, in conversation, despite it having bad reviews sounds perfect. I'm not sure if, like, grammatically speaking, that would be the best one, but yeah, I would say despite it having bad reviews. We can put the person as well, depending on the sentence, but keeping the gerund there and not putting, like, another conjugated verb. Despite it having bad reviews. Even though the project was delayed, the client was still satisfied. Nice. Although the project was delayed, the client was still satisfied. Although she didn't study much, she passed the exam. Even though she didn't study much for the exam, she killed it. Yes. And if you guys know that we have these phrases that sound negative, but they're actually positive, like, oh, she crushed it. She killed it. She smashed it. If you guys see, like, she ate. All of these are positive things. In spite of the delay with the project, the client was still satisfied. Okay, that's another important thing to remember. Despite, you can also say in spite of. So we never say despite of, that is not correct, but you can say despite, or another way to say this is in spite of. That is the same idea as despite. We have decided to try the restaurant despite its bad reviews. Yes. Amazing. Good job, everyone. These are good examples. I think I have another one where it's just you coming up with your own. Yeah. So I want you to think of a setback. A setback is like a challenge or something that made something take longer for you. And think of a setback or problem you had where one door closed and another door opened, or you made lemonade out of lemons, and write a couple sentences. You can use although, even though, despite, in hindsight, we talked about earlier. These phrases we didn't practice, but to my surprise, or as it turned out, luckily, fortunately, the bright side, outcome, setback, unexpected. These are all vocabulary words that we can use to make our own examples. Despite the fact that the project was delayed, the client was still satisfied. Nice. I'll say, even though I didn't mean to put this filter with the flower on my head, I actually really like it. And to my surprise, it goes very nicely with my video. And maybe on the bright side, I can use this filter in the future when I'm feeling tired and want to look better on my life. Nice. Okay, any other examples here? Fortunately, the parking fine wasn't as expensive as I expected. This is a really good sentence, yeah. So it wasn't as expensive as I expected. If you haven't written any sentence in English today, I would say give it your best shot and try to think of your own example. If you need to copy another person and change the words, that's also fine. It's okay to copy people and make it your own. I think that's a valid way to learn. So maybe another example could be, despite the delay, the train finally came. Despite the construction happening on the side of my street, the cars are finally able to pass through. You're not able to come up with any idea. Okay, maybe you don't have enough challenges. No, I'm just kidding. Even though, or maybe they don't go well, so you have nothing to contrast it with. Despite the setbacks, I nailed it. That's a good example. Even though the life brought you a lemon, Yeah, okay. Even though the life brought you a lemon, make lemonade out of lemons. Or you could say you made lemonade out of lemons. Despite being sick, you still showed up for the class. Yes. I think last week I was a level of sick that was not possible to have the live class, but this week it was more possible. Even though I was never here in this online lesson, I like it. Nice. Awesome. Despite the heavy rain, I arrived on time at work. Yeah, we can say heavily when you're describing the verb. So despite it raining heavily, but then despite the heavy rain. And this is my beautiful filter. Do you guys have any other questions or examples? I have a couple minutes if you want to ask any other questions based on the class today. So we had despite, even though, and although. And hopefully now, maybe I can remove this interesting filter. Okay. Sorry if that was a jump scare to any. Hopefully now you guys can understand a little bit more how to use the word despite in a sentence. I think it's important to practice this because not everything in English, not everything when you're learning a language is difficult because of the meaning of the word, like the translation of the word. It's also important, like, how can I use the word in a sentence? Because if it's a word like despite, you need to be careful about, okay, what can I put after it? And I think if you feel more comfortable with that, it will help you actually use the word in real life. Okay, this is a good question. So, however is not used the same way. Technically, however and but and nevertheless are connectors of contrast instead of concession. So I would say, however, is a bit easier to use. Similar to the word although, you can just put it at the beginning of the sentence. Except, yeah, although you can put at the beginning and the middle, and however, you only put at the beginning of the sentence that you're contrasting. It was raining all day. However, the game wasn't canceled. Versus, although it was raining all day, the game wasn't canceled. So however is more connected to the result part of the sentence, and although is connected to the condition part of the sentence. So although it was raining all day, the game wasn't canceled, versus it was raining all day, however, the game wasn't canceled. So we'll connect although with maybe the condition that makes things difficult, like the unexpected challenge, and then however is going to connect to the unexpected result. Even though my day is busy, I'm here for you give us all. Okay, yeah, you're welcome. Despite the drawbacks in life, I'm not gonna throw in the towel. Nice. Alex is always here with the idioms, so nice job. Although we don't know each other in person, it is a pleasure to attend your online class. Thank you. Of course, I'm happy. I feel like today's class was really good. You guys did made some great examples, and hopefully you were able to understand a little bit more how to use these words in a sentence. And now if you want to be the toxic positive friend, like your friend is having a difficult time and you want to say, don't worry, just make lemonade out of lemons. You have some more phrases to use. Despite going to bed late, I go to the park early in the morning. Yeah, that sounds like it's something you always do. If you wanted to say it specifically happened this morning, I would say I went to the park in the morning. Yeah, I feel like this lesson did go by pretty fast. So, thank you for sticking around. And yeah, okay, if you haven't seen it on my YouTube, I posted a full 40-minute video about Thanksgiving, and I recommend everyone watch it because it is good listening practice, and I explain a lot about the culture of the United States. So if you're interested in, watching it, I think it gives good context to know about the culture if you are a person that likes to watch Friends or other US TV shows. I think it can be helpful to like have a little bit of cultural context. So that is my plug for today. Oh, you came in here by accident. Yeah, I love when people say like, "Oh, this is my first time here. I accidentally clicked this live." I go live on Instagram every Saturday, and I go live on TikTok every Tuesday and usually Friday, but yesterday I was talking to my sister at night, so I did not go live. But yeah, so those are my things to promote, I guess, is my YouTube video. I also have all of my availability for my group classes in December now on my schedule on my website. I think today I'm going to post my topics for the month. I need to get on that. Okay, yeah, I am running conversation classes. I didn't see this message. I have B1 and B2 conversation classes on my website. I will put my website here. It is charmenglish.cl. The classes are maximum 4 people, and it's all focused on conversation, but trying to use like new things in conversation. Right. I am going to go. I'm so sorry for everyone joining now that was expecting me to be live because today I accidentally went live 1 hour earlier. Take care. Bye, everyone.